Today we're going on a suspenseful journey with 7 horror stories involving driving alone at night. Get ready to hear chilling stories from drivers who faced scary situations on deserted roads, unexpected encounters and moments when fear took over behind the wheel. We're going to explore stories based on real events, showing that danger can lurk when we least expect it, especially when we're alone on the dark road. So, sit back, make sure your headlights are on and your doors are locked, and let's start this spine-chilling journey. Oh, and before anything appears in your rearview mirror, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell and leave a like. This helps the channel a lot and ensures that you don't miss any scary content like this. Let's go. 1. The car without license plate. It was a cold, dry night in the Utah desert when Daniel Torres, 28, left a conference in Salt Lake City to head home to Moab. The road was long and nearly deserted, cutting through miles of dark, arid landscape. Daniel liked to drive at night, enjoying the silence and the starry sky. But something was different that morning. Just after passing through a small town, he noticed a black car appear in his rearview mirror. No license plates, low beams, and keeping a precise distance behind his vehicle. At first, Daniel thought it was a coincidence, but at every turn, at every fork in the road, the black car remained behind, imitating his every move. He tried to speed up, but the car kept up. He slowed down, hoping to be overtaken, but the pursuer never did. The discomfort turned to tension. Daniel changed lanes, turned onto a secondary road, but the unmarked car remained behind, like a silent shadow. The road became even more isolated. Daniel began to feel cold sweat running down his back. He tried to rationalize. Maybe it was another lost driver, someone heading in the same direction. But when he passed a closed gas station, he decided to test it. He pulled over on the shoulder, pretending to check the tire. The black car also stopped, keeping its distance, engine running. Headlights now off, Daniel got back in the car, accelerated, and took the next exit, turning onto a poorly lit dirt road. The pursuer followed without hesitation. Fear turned to panic. Daniel tried to call the police, but his cell phone signal was intermittent. He thought about heading back to the city, but the way back seemed riskier. In a desperate attempt, he turned off the car's lights and turned onto a side path, hoping to lose his pursuer. For a few minutes, everything was silent until he saw the headlights of the black car appear again. Cutting through the darkness like hungry eyes, the game of cat and mouse intensified. Daniel sped along dirt roads, dodging rocks and potholes, trying to maintain control as the black car got closer and closer. On a sharp curve, he nearly lost control and swerved off the road, but managed to get the wheel back. The pursuer tailgated him, flashing his headlights and trying to force him to stop. Daniel saw a sign ahead for a viewpoint and decided to take a chance. He quickly pulled in, parked in reverse, and turned off his lights, hoping the pursuer would drive straight past. For a moment, silence returned. Daniel held his breath, watching the rearview mirror. The black car stopped a few feet ahead, blocking the exit. The doors opened slowly, and 2 men got out, both wearing dark clothes and low caps, their faces hidden in shadow. One of them held something metal in his hands. Daniel felt his heart race. He locked the doors, took a tire iron from the glove compartment, and started the engine, ready to flee. The men approached, banging on the window and trying to force open the door. Daniel sped off in reverse, avoiding them by inches, and sped back onto the main road. The black car turned around and resumed the chase, this time more aggressively. Daniel saw distant lights, a truck coming in the opposite direction. He floored the accelerator, swerved the car into the middle of the road, and flashed his headlights. Trying to attract attention, the truck driver honked, forcing the black car to pull over to the shoulder. Taking advantage of the distraction, Daniel sped up until he reached a small town, where he stopped at a local police station. Trembling, he reported everything to the police, who patrolled the road but did not find the black car. In the following weeks, Daniel discovered that other drivers had reported similar chases in the area, always involving a car with no license, plates, and unknown men. The case was never solved, but it served as a warning to anyone who drives alone at night. On the deserted roads of the American countryside, Daniel changed his habits, avoiding nighttime trips and always letting someone know where he was going. The feeling of being watched never completely left him, and the memory of that night remained a grim reminder on the solitude of the road. True danger can be lurking, waiting just for the right moment to strike. 2. The stop on the road. Clara Vidal, 26, was driving alone on the Eta highway, crossing the Spanish countryside toward Zaragoza after a weekend with friends in Madrid. It was a Monday night, the sky overcast and the road almost deserted. With only her headlights cutting through the darkness, her tank was showing low, and Clara decided to stop at the first gas station she came across. An isolated place with dim lighting, a blinking sign, and not a soul in sight except the attendant, a middle-aged man with a fixed gaze and a cold expression. She got out of the car, asked for a full tank of gas, and went into the convenience store to buy water. As she selected a bottle, she felt the attendant's gaze following her every move, as if studying her gestures. The atmosphere was oppressive, absolute silence, disorganized shelves, the distant sound of an old TV broadcasting static. Clara paid quickly, avoiding eye contact, and returned to her car. As she approached the vehicle, she noticed a folded piece of paper under the windshield wiper. The note, written in large, shaky letters, read, "You should not travel alone at night." Her blood ran cold. She looked around, but the attendant had already disappeared behind the gas station. Clara got into the car, locked the doors, and drove away quickly, her heart racing. For the first few kilometers, she tried to convince herself that it was just a bad joke. But when she looked in the rearview mirror, she saw an old car, without headlights, appearing on the road and keeping a constant distance at each turn or lane change. The vehicle repeated its movements. Clara accelerated, but the pursuer kept up. She slowed down, hoping to be overtaken, but the car never left her behind. Fear turned to panic when, as she passed an overpass, the mysterious car accelerated and pulled up alongside her. Through the window, Clara saw the gas station attendant behind the wheel, smiling sinisterly. He gestured, pointing at her and ahead, as if daring her to keep going. Clara tried to call the police, but her cell phone signal was weak and the call dropped. She decided not to stop at any exit, fearing she would be cornered. The chase lasted almost an hour. The gas station attendant's car alternated between accelerating and backing up, flashing its headlights and trying to force her off the road. Clara remained calm, remembering safety tips: don't stop, don't get out of the car, and find a busy place. Finally, she spotted the entrance to a well-lit service area full of trucks. She swerved into it, parked between two large vehicles, and honked her horn repeatedly. The pursuing car stopped at the entrance, hesitated when it saw the movement, and finally turned around and disappeared into the darkness. Trembling, Clara asked for help from the truck drivers, who accompanied her to the nearest police station. There, she reported everything that had happened. The police patrolled the area, but did not find the car or the attendant. They discovered, however, that other drivers had already reported similar situations at that station, always involving pursuits and threats. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. The station had already had a history of disappearances in the area, mainly of women traveling alone at night. Security cameras showed the attendant watching Clara and other drivers, but there was never enough evidence to indict him. Police stepped up surveillance, but the man disappeared days later, leaving the station abandoned. Clara never traveled alone at night again. The incident served as a warning to drivers throughout Spain. Not every roadside stop is safe, and the solitude of the night can reveal predators lurking, ready to turn a simple refueling stop into a real nightmare. Clara's fear was not irrational. It was a reflection of a danger that night, almost chose her as its next victim. The trauma stayed with her for months. Clara changed her routine, started to warn her family about each route and only traveled during rush hour. Her story circulated on forums and drivers' groups, inspiring awareness campaigns about nighttime safety. The gas station became known as La Parada del Miedo, becoming a symbol of a real and invisible danger. on Spanish roads. 3. The pedestrian on the curve. James McAllister, 34, was driving alone along a winding country road in the Scottish Highlands on a cold, rainy night. Thick fog and constant rain made visibility almost impossible, and the silence of the surrounding area was broken only by the sound of tires on wet asphalt. As he drove, James began to notice a lone figure walking along the side of the road at different points, always staring at his car. The figure, a man of indistinct appearance, wearing dark clothing and a hood that partially concealed his face, seemed to be always just a little ahead, disappearing and reappearing around bends and dark stretches of road. At first, James thought it was just an ordinary pedestrian, perhaps someone who needed help or had gotten lost. But the repetition and intensity of the stare began to make him uncomfortable and afraid. The figure seemed to always be one step ahead, as if it were controlling James's path, anticipating his movements. At one of the rest stops, James tried to call for help in a small village nearby, but discovered that other drivers had mysteriously disappeared in the area, all reporting having seen the same figure before it disappeared. The tension increased when James realized that his cell phone had no signal and that the car seemed to be followed by shadows that appeared around the corners. He tried to speed up, but the figure continued to appear as if it were controlling the route. In a moment of desperation, James decided not to stop in any village and head straight for the nearest larger city. But the feeling of being watched and followed would not leave him. During the journey, James began to notice strange signs: fresh tire marks on the side of the road, human footprints that mysteriously disappeared into the mud, and trees with deep scratches, as if someone or something had passed by in a hurry. Fear turned to panic when, at a sharp bend, James saw the figure standing in the middle of the road, blocking his path. He braked sharply, but the man simply disappeared into the fog, leaving behind an oppressive silence. James, despite his growing fear, tried to remain calm and rational. He knew that any wrong decision could be fatal on that deserted road. He tried to call the police again, but the signal remained non-existent. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming, and the silence of the night seemed to amplify every sound, every shadow that moved in the distance. In a moment of lucidity, James decided to use his high beams to try to better illuminate the road and, who knows, scare off the figure following him. To his surprise, the figure did not retreat, but instead advanced, as if challenging him to continue. The psychological game between pursuer and pursued intensified, turning the journey into a nightmare of cat and mouse. With every mile he drove, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. James began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed: fresh tire marks on the side of the road, human footprints that mysteriously disappeared into the mud, and trees with deep scratches, as if someone or something had passed by in a hurry. At a sharp bend, James saw the figure standing in the middle of the road, blocking his path. He braked sharply, but the man simply disappeared into the fog, leaving behind an oppressive silence and a cold that seemed to penetrate to the bone. Fear turned to panic, but James knew he had to stay calm to survive. He sped on, trying to outrun the figure that seemed to control his every move. When he finally reached the city, he was exhausted, his hands shaking, and his heart racing. Although he was safe for now, James knew that the mysterious figure was still watching him, and that the road would never be the same for him again. The case gained local notoriety, with reports from other drivers who had passed through the same road and had similar experiences, adding to the mystery and fear surrounding the area. Local police patrolled the area frequently, but were never able to capture or identify the man on the bend. Residents and motorists avoid the road at night, and the story has become a dark legend, a warning to anyone venturing alone on Scotland's isolated roads. For anyone driving alone at night, especially in isolated areas, the story serves as a grim warning. Danger may be closer than you think, and the feeling of being watched could be the first sign of a fatal fate. Hey guys, the stories about driving alone at night are still pretty chilling, aren't they? If you're enjoying these suspenseful stories, take a quick break, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing you more chilling content. Now, let's get back to the next stories. There's still a long dark road ahead. For the van with the faded headlights, a cold wind bit Clara's face as she walked to the gas station, and the feeling of isolation grew with every step. Clara Vidal, 26, was driving alone on the Eta highway, crossing the Spanish countryside toward Zaragoza after a weekend with friends in Madrid. It was a Monday night, the sky overcast and the road almost deserted, with only her headlights cutting through the darkness. Her tank was showing low, and Clara decided to stop. At the first gas station, she came across an isolated place, with dim lighting, a blinking sign, and not a soul in sight except the attendant, a middle-aged man with a fixed gaze and a cold expression. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere in the darkness. She got out of the car, asked for a refill, and went into the convenience store to buy water. As she selected a bottle, she felt the attendant's gaze following her every move, as if studying her gestures. The atmosphere was oppressive, absolute. Silence, disorganized shelves, the distant sound of an old TV broadcasting static. Clara paid quickly, avoiding eye contact, and returned to her car. Clara felt a shiver run down her spine when she realized that the attendant didn't blink. His fixed gaze seemed to pierce her soul. As she approached the vehicle, she noticed a folded piece of paper under the windshield wiper. The note, written in large, shaky letters, read, "You should not travel alone at night." Her blood ran cold. She looked around, but the attendant had already disappeared behind the gas station. Clara got into her car, locked the doors, and drove away quickly, feeling her heart race. While filling up, Clara noticed that the gas station lights were flashing irregularly, as if something was wrong beyond the obvious. For the first few kilometers, she tried to convince herself that it was just a bad joke. But when she looked in the rearview mirror, she saw an old car, without headlights, appearing on the road and keeping a constant distance. At each turn or lane change, the vehicle repeated its movements. Clara accelerated, but the pursuer kept up. She slowed down, hoping to be overtaken, but the car never left her behind. The old car that followed her seemed to emerge from the shadows, silent and implacable, like a ghostly presence. Fear turned to panic when, as she passed an overpass, the mysterious car accelerated and pulled up alongside her. Through the window, Clara saw the gas station attendant at the wheel, smiling sinisterly. He gestured, pointing at her and ahead, as if daring her to keep going. Clara tried to call the police, but her cell phone signal was weak and the call dropped. She decided not to stop at any exit, fearing she would be cornered at every turn-in. The road seemed to increase the tension, with the mysterious car always reappearing, as if it were playing a game with her. The chase lasted almost an hour. The gas station attendant's car alternated between accelerating and backing up, flashing its headlights and trying to force her off the road. Clara remained calm, remembering safety tips: don't stop, don't get out of the car, and find a busy place. Finally, she spotted the entrance to a well-lit service area full of trucks. She swerved inside, parked between two large vehicles, and honked repeatedly. The call to the police was cut off abruptly, leaving Clara alone and vulnerable on the deserted road. The pursuing car stopped at the entrance, hesitated when it saw movement, and finally turned around and disappeared into the darkness. Trembling, Clara asked for help from the truck drivers, who accompanied her to the nearest police station. There, she reported everything that had happened. The police patrolled the area, but could not find the car or the attendant. They discovered, however, that other drivers had already reported similar situations at that station, always involving pursuits and threats. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. The station had already had a history of disappearances in the area, mainly of women traveling alone at night. Security cameras showed the attendant watching Clara and other drivers, but there was never enough evidence to indict him. Police stepped up surveillance, but the man disappeared days later, leaving the station abandoned. The brightly lit service area seemed like an oasis in the darkness, offering a last hope of safety. Clara never traveled alone at night again. The incident served as a warning to drivers across Spain. Not every service station is safe, and the solitude of the night can reveal predators lurking, ready to turn a simple refueling stop into a living nightmare. Clara's fear was not irrational, it was a reflection of a danger that night, almost chose her as its next victim. The trauma stayed with her for months. Clara changed her routine, started to warn her family about each route, and only traveled during rush hour. Her story circulated on forums and drivers' groups, inspiring awareness campaigns about nighttime safety. The gas station became known as La Parada del Miedo, becoming a symbol of a real and invisible danger on Spanish roads. The feeling of being watched never left her, even after leaving the road behind. 5. Or manipulated. Sofia Lindgren, 31, a project manager for a Swedish multinational, was used to traveling alone on Scandinavian roads. That January evening, she was driving from Oslo to Bergen, crossing snow-covered landscapes and dense forests under a dark, overcast sky. Her car, a new model equipped with integrated GPS and an intelligent onboard system, was her ally on the long, poorly signposted routes through the Norwegian countryside. At first, everything seemed normal. The GPS indicated the fastest route, and Sofia followed the automatic instructions without question. However, after a quick stop for fuel in a deserted village, the system began to recalculate the route, suggesting detours along increasingly narrow and isolated secondary roads. Sofia, trusting the technology, accepted the new routes, believing that she would avoid any accidents or snow blockages. As the miles passed, her discomfort grew. The roads became more deserted, with no signage, and the GPS kept giving strange commands. Turn right into 100 meters, leading her onto dirt tracks covered in ice. Her cell phone signal disappeared, and the snow began to fall harder, making visibility difficult. Sofia tried to reconfigure the GPS, but the system froze, manually blocking any route changes. Fear set in when she realized she was completely alone, with no houses, lights, or other cars nearby. The car's dashboard displayed a message: custom, route in progress, continue driving. Sofia tried to turn off the system, but the car ignored her commands, keeping the doors locked and the headlights on. The GPS now showed a blinking red dot on a map with no roads, only indicating destination. Coming soon. Desperate, Sofia stopped the car and tried to get out, but the doors wouldn't open. The radio turned on by itself, transmitting static, and then a distorted male voice. "You're doing well, Sofia. Not long now." Panic set in. She realized that someone had hacked into the car's system, remotely controlling every move. The fear of being watched became unbearable, and Sofia felt like she was being led into a trap. The snow was getting thicker, and the road turned into a trail lined with tall, dark trees. Suddenly, the GPS commanded, "Stop the car." The headlights turned off automatically, plunging Sofia into total darkness. Outside, only the sound of the wind and the snow hitting the windows. She heard footsteps in the snow, at first distant, then getting closer. A flashlight appeared between the trees, illuminating the car. Sofia tried to start the engine, but the system was locked. The voice came back, this time clearer: "Get out of the car slowly." Sofia, in shock, saw two masked men approaching, one of them with an open laptop, probably the one responsible for hacking into the car's system. They tried to force the door, but Sofia managed to manually activate the emergency alarm, which triggered lights and loud sounds. The men, frightened, fled towards the forest, leaving tracks in the snow. Minutes later, a road maintenance truck drove by on the trail. Attracted by the alarm, the driver helped Sofia out of the car and called the police. The investigation revealed that the GPS system had been hacked by criminals specializing in kidnapping and stealing luxury cars. They were monitoring lone drivers, manipulating routes for ambushes in areas with no signal and no witnesses. The case gained prominence in Norway, leading automakers to reinforce digital security protocols and warn drivers about the risks of blindly trusting automatic systems. Traumatized, Sofia spent months in therapy and changed her travel habits. opting for busy routes and always informing family members about her route. The story of the manipulated GPS has become a symbol of modern terror, the predator that no longer needs brute force, but technology and patience to turn the road into a deadly maze. For those who drive alone in isolated regions, here's a warning. The voice of the GPS is not always your ally. Sometimes it can be the beginning of a real nightmare. 6. The hidden passenger. Patrick O'Connor, 33, was a ride-hailing driver in Dublin, used to driving around the city streets until the wee hours of the morning. On that cold December night, traffic was slow, and he was about to call it a day when he received a ride to a remote neighborhood near Phoenix Park. The passenger, identified only as Sean, had no profile picture and did not respond to the initial greeting via the app's chat. The final destination was an even more isolated industrial area, known for being deserted at night. When he arrived at the pickup point, Patrick saw no one. The neighborhood was made up of old houses, most of them with their lights off. He honked and sent a message through the app, but there was no response. He decided to wait a few minutes, watching in the rearview mirror for any movement on the street. Nothing. The silence was absolute, except for the distant sound of a dog barking and the cold wind that made the trees sway. Patrick, already accustomed to people giving up, was about to cancel the ride when he felt a chill run down his spine. He had the strange feeling that he wasn't alone. He glanced quickly at the back seat, but saw nothing but shadows. Still, something seemed wrong. The smell of a strong perfume, different from his usual one, permeated the air. Hesitantly, Patrick decided to continue the journey to the indicated destination, believing that perhaps the passenger had entered discreetly. While he was checking his cell phone, as had happened before, during the journey, the feeling of being watched grew. The rearview mirror reflected only darkness, but Patrick felt a disturbing presence behind him. He tried to start a conversation, asking if everything was okay, but received no response. The discomfort turned into fear when, as he passed through a dark stretch of road, he heard a faint noise, as if someone was breathing deeply a few inches from the back of his neck. At his destination, a deserted street surrounded by abandoned warehouses, Patrick stopped the car and turned around. At that moment, a hand covered his mouth and a strong arm pulled him into the back seat. The attacker, wearing a mask and gloves, threatened Patrick with a knife, demanding money, his cell phone, and his car keys. In the midst of his panic, Patrick tried to fight back, but was restrained and tied up with duct tape. The criminal searched the car for valuables, while a second man, who had emerged from the bushes, kept watch on the street. The two men spoke in whispers, clearly experienced in ambushes. Patrick realized that the fake profile on the app was just bait to lure drivers into isolated areas, where they could be easily held up and robbed. He heard the attackers mention other drivers who had disappeared after accepting similar nighttime rides. His fear grew when he realized that the men had a plan. They knew where the car's cameras were, how to disable the app's tracker, and even what valuables to look for. Everything was done with precision, as if they had practiced many times. After searching everything, the men left Patrick tied up in the back seat and fled in the spare car they had parked nearby. Hours later, Patrick managed to free himself and, staggering, asked for help at a nearby factory. The police were called and, after investigation, discovered a series of similar crimes in the region, all with the same modus operandi: fake profiles, remote areas, quick and violent attacks. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. The criminals created fake profiles on different ride-hailing apps using random names and photos. They monitored drivers in real time, choosing targets who were driving alone during off-peak hours. The victims were always stopped in places without public cameras, and the cars, when recovered, were always clean, with no fingerprints or traces. Patrick discovered that other drivers had disappeared completely after similar attacks, and some vehicles were never found. The case gained notoriety in Dublin, leading ride-hailing apps to reinforce safety protocols, requiring identity verification, and restricting rides to high-risk areas during the early hours of the morning. Patrick, traumatized, quit his night job and spent months in therapy, Dealing with the constant fear of being watched or followed, he collaborated with the police, helping to identify patterns in the attacks and participating in awareness campaigns. For other drivers, the story of the hidden passenger has become a symbol of the real danger faced by ride-hailing drivers in big cities. For those who work alone at night, it is a warning: not every passenger is who they seem to be, and the real danger may be waiting silently in the back seat, ready to turn an ordinary ride into an unforgettable nightmare. Patrick's trauma has served as a lesson for an entire professional category. The solitude of the night can hide alert predators, and trust in digital systems is no substitute for the instinct for self-preservation. 7. The abandoned car. Snow was beginning to pile up on the shoulders of the road as Olivia Harris, 29, drove home from a conference in Great Falls to Helena. It was Sunday night. US 287 was nearly deserted, and the radio picked up only static. The silence of the icy landscape was broken only by the sound of the engine and the headlights cutting through the darkness. Olivia, accustomed to driving alone on long roads, felt comfortable until she spotted something unusual. A car stopped in the middle of the road, its doors open and its high beams illuminating the snow. Olivia slowed down, feeling increasingly uneasy. The car, a dark sedan, appeared intact, with no signs of an accident or collision. There was no one around, no other vehicles in sight. She stopped a few feet behind, turned on her hazard lights, and hesitated. She reached for her cell phone, but there was no signal. She called out, asking if anyone needed help, but all she heard was the echo of her own voice. The cold grew stronger, and the sense of danger grew. She decided to get out of the car. Keeping the key and phone in her hand, she approached cautiously, noticing footprints in the snow around the vehicle, but none leading away from the road. Inside the sedan, a woman's purse was thrown on the passenger seat, and a cell phone was ringing non-stop, vibrating on the console. Olivia looked around, feeling watched. The dense forest seemed to hide watchful eyes. She quickly got back into her car, but when she tried to reverse, she noticed lights flashing ahead. Another car was blocking the road behind her, appearing out of nowhere, with its headlights aimed directly at her windshield. Panic set in. Olivia locked the doors and tried to call 911, but the phone wouldn't connect. She saw quick movements in the trees, shadows moving in the darkness. A tall, hooded man appeared at the edge of the woods, watching her silently. Another man approached the abandoned car, looking directly at her. Olivia realized it was a trap, a scene set up to force drivers to stop, making them easy targets. Thinking quickly, Olivia turned off her headlights, released the handbrake, and sped onto the shoulder, narrowly missing the stopped sedan. The car behind her tried to follow, but she sped along a side trail she knew from previous trips, driving blindly through the snow. Her heart pounded as she watched the headlights of her pursuers trying to catch up to her, but the uneven road and darkness made it difficult to follow. The escape was tense and desperate. Olivia drove for minutes that seemed like hours, dodging fallen branches and holes hidden by the snow. At every turn, she looked in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the lights of her pursuers reappear. At one point, she heard the sound of tires skidding behind her, but she didn't stop. She kept going until she saw a road maintenance booth. She stopped there, locked herself inside the car, and honked the horn until a frightened employee appeared. Together, they managed to contact the police, who arrived half an hour later. The officers searched the area but found neither the abandoned sedan nor the pursuers. All that remained were tire tracks and footprints in the snow, which were soon covered by the approaching storm. Olivia, still in shock, was escorted to the police station, where she gave a statement. She discovered that other drivers had reported similar situations in the area: abandoned cars, open doors, personal items displayed as bait. In some cases, victims had been kidnapped or robbed after stopping to help. The investigation revealed that the gang responsible for the attacks monitored lone drivers, setting traps at strategic points and using the forest as a hiding place. They changed locations every week, making it difficult for the police to act. Olivia's case was featured in local newspapers, serving as a warning to anyone traveling alone on isolated roads. The police stepped up patrols, but the criminals were never caught. Traumatized, Olivia changed her routine. She began to avoid nighttime trips and always warned her family about her route. Her experience inspired awareness campaigns about highway traps and the importance of never getting out of the car in suspicious situations. The fear of that cold night stayed with her for a long time, but it also made her an active voice for the safety of solo drivers. The abandoned car has become a symbol of the real danger on American roads, a perfect trap created by predators that hide in the darkness, waiting only for the next unaccompanied victim. For those who drive alone at night, it is a warning. Not every scene of rescue is what it seems, and the road can hide horrors ready to turn an ordinary trip into a nightmare with no return. The memory of that night has never completely left Olivia. She has joined support groups for victims of highway crime, sharing her story in lectures and educational campaigns. The case has led to changes in emergency protocols and encouraged the installation of more cameras and surveillance posts on the region's highways. Still, whenever the snow starts to fall and the road becomes deserted, drivers remember the abandoned car and the woman who survived the terror, and they double their attention, knowing that danger could be lurking around every corner. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving driving alone at night. So, which one scared you the most? Will any of them make you think twice before hitting the road late at night? Tell us in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of nighttime travel, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and encourages me to bring you more spine-chilling stories. And if you're not a subscriber yet, take advantage now to subscribe and activate the bell